Yeah, they're going to fire this right.
There's my favorite photographer.
Hey, man.
Chris says we were saying he can issue. Good morning. Do you know if they changed the bylaws?
We have to go again. Continue.
No, I won't. We'll just use boxes.
Thanks for that.
because I have to leave after the vote.
We are meeting today to consider the nomination of Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. to be Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. We are still waiting to get all of our members here, and while we wait for that to occur, we will proceed with statements. And I will proceed first, then Senator Wyden, and then we will rotate from one side to the other until we are at a point where we're prepared for the vote. Does that fit with you, Senator Wyden?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Kennedy, if confirmed, will have the opportunity to deliver much-needed change to our nation's healthcare system. He has spent his career fighting to end America's chronic illness epidemic and has been a leading advocate for healthcare transparency, both for patients and for taxpayers. Mr. Kennedy has also clearly responded to our questions during the rigorous due diligence process in his hearing also, and in the course of answering over 900 questions for the record that were asked by members of this committee. In response to members of the committee, Mr. Kennedy has even amended his ethics agreement, going beyond what is required by the Government Office of Ethics. Mr. Kennedy has proven his commitment to the role of Secretary of the HHS, and I will vote in favor of his nomination. I strongly encourage my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to do the same. And with that, I recognize our ranking member, Senator Wyden, for his remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'll have a brief statement, and then several of my colleagues on our side are also going to make brief statements. This morning, we're going to vote on Robert Kennedy's nomination to serve as our nation's chief health care officer. Before we get to Mr. Kennedy and why I believe he is singularly unfit to serve as HHS Secretary, I'd like to say this. The last several days we've witnessed an authoritarian takeover of our federal government by Elon Musk and Donald Trump. They have set their sights on a full purge of anyone in government that doesn't bend the knee and follow their orders. They've taken over the Treasury Department's payment system. And colleagues, that has a direct effect on major programs within our committee's jurisdiction that includes Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. For example, this committee voted for a major reform of pharmacy benefit manager legislation. We passed it 26-0, but Trump and Musk killed it. Think what they could do with abuse of the payment system. Now, in my view, much of this is of dubious legality and constitutional authority, and certainly flies in face of congressional responsibilities. I'll wrap up on this point by saying I hope our colleagues on the other side of the aisle will not sit by while Musk and Trump make a mockery of the power Republicans hold in their congressional majority. Now more than ever, the American people need leaders that will stand up to these abuses. That brings me to Mr. Kennedy. A recent analysis showed that Mr. Kennedy has made 114 separate appearances in just the last 4 years where he has espoused anti-vaccine views or spread information about the efficacy of vaccines, misinformation specifically. In 36 of those instances, Mr. Kennedy directly linked vaccines to autism. Last week, Mr. Kennedy was given ample authority on a bipartisan basis to recant his decades-long career peddling anti-vaccine conspiracies. Instead, he spent his time with us dodging and weaving and gave no indication that if confirmed as HHS Secretary, he would stand by the long-settled science surrounding routine vaccinations. Just take the Samoa measles outbreak as an example. Mr. Kennedy told me, and I quote, "We don't know what was killing them," speaking about the 83 measles deaths during an outbreak of the disease in 2019. Just yesterday, colleagues, the Director General of Health from Samoa called this claim a total fabrication. Peddling these conspiracy theories as the nation's chief health officer is going to be deadly for kids across the country. On abortion, Mr. Kennedy's answers once again raised still more questions. He refused to tell us whether he would blindly follow a directive from Donald Trump to break the law and end access to mifepristone. And he seemed to have no understanding of his role in enforcing existing federal laws that guarantee women the right to life-saving abortion care. Mr. Kennedy also failed on several occasions to show a basic understanding of the Medicare and Medicaid programs he would be tasked with overseeing. Colleagues, that alone should be disqualifying. Mr. Kennedy has given us no reason to believe he'll be anything other than a rubber stamp for plans to gut Medicaid and rip health care away from the American people, and be a yes man if ordered by Musk or Trump to take an illegal action. I close with this, colleagues. Today, we're going to make a judgment about the future of science in this country. We're going to make decisions that are going to impact the health and well-being of Americans for years to come. I agree, and I say this to my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, that the healthcare status quo needs substantial changes so we get better, more affordable care to patients. And that leaves, given my statement, the question in front of us now that's pretty simple. Do senators want their legacy to include disregarding basic health science and instead elevate conspiracy theorists? Making Robert Kennedy Secretary of Health and Human Services, in my view, colleagues, would be a grave threat to the health of the American people. And I urge my colleagues this morning to vote no.
We have everybody here. Can I ask that we do the vote now and then do the
Why don't you
comment?
do it 2 or 3 on each, and then we go to the vote?
Can I go?
Yeah, we're going to do it.
So Senator Wyden, we have all of our members here. Senator Wyden and I have agreed that we will have 2 or 3 on each side who wanted to make statements do so before the vote. So please, everyone, hold with us while we have those statements made, and then we will proceed to the vote. I know we've got a lot of folks here pushing on some. Do you want to vote now?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I've got several colleagues who were under the impression after we talked that we would have 2 or 3, and I'm happy for both sides to make brief remarks, and I'd still like to stay with that.
I did make that commitment, and so I could say to my colleagues on my side, I would appreciate it if you would hold your remarks until after the vote. We will let a couple on your side have their remarks, and then we will proceed to the vote.
Great, thank you.
And who would be next?
Senator Cantwell.
Senator Cantwell.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I didn't, when you said 2 or 3 people, I didn't know who you had in mind, but being next in seniority, I appreciate the opportunity. Today is very concerning to me because of the future of what I think our nation faces. When I think of this issue, I think of my Pacific Northwest leadership, how Paul Allen, on his own, invested $100 million to fight Ebola. I think of Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation, not just trying to eradicate polio and work on these issues, but to think of a regime that helps not just our nation's health, but global health. So with the UW, the University of Washington, the Cancer Research Center, all of these entities are a collaboration of saying we have to go faster in solving these threats to our nation as it relates to health. Now, we can have a big discussion, which I think you guys all want to have a big discussion about whether and when what happened in the Wuhan province. But I can tell you, we were the first city. We had the first patient. We had the first people who died in nursing homes. We had an emergency room at a hospital who basically was just begging for any equipment we could get them. The whole community stood up and moved as fast as we possibly could and broke down barriers to save lives. And that is what we have to continue to do on innovation. We cannot let another country get ahead of us on some sort of warfare issue and not have a response when it comes to a vaccine. So the most challenging, I wanted to vote for Mr. Kennedy in the context of my family's history. My dad stood behind his father the night his father gave the famous speech. I told him in my office, in my family, the Kennedys stood up. But when he answered Senator Cassidy's question, and he couldn't even give him the answer that, yes, the data is there to support vaccines today. I don't need any more data. All of a sudden, I saw this world that we got affected by in Seattle not being stood up for. I need someone at HHS who is going to say we're going to be a leader in medical technology, science, vaccines. We are going to fight foreign powers. We are going to be there to provide global health, and I don't want a recalcitrant. I need a leader, and that is why I'm voting no.
Thank you. Senator Wyden and I have agreed that Senator Warnock will now speak. Following Senator Warnock, we will proceed to the vote, and then anyone else who wants to make remarks will be allowed to make remarks. Senator Warnock.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Chairman. At a rally a few months ago, Donald Trump said that he was going to allow Mr. Robert Kennedy to, quote, go wild on health. Go wild. Of all the things that I can think of that I'd like to see a Secretary of Health and Human Services do, go wild is not on the list. Mr. Robert Kennedy is manifestly unqualified for the job he seeks. And in both my live and written questions for the record, he failed to commit to protecting access to affordable health care, failed to commit to protecting the people who are protecting us. The problem that the CDC has is that every day these noble civil servants and workers protect us from dangers that we don't see. And often you don't get credit for protecting people from things that they don't see. I simply do not trust him to oversee the CDC. He's unqualified, and I dare say everybody here knows it. We need a serious person at the helm of the HHS, an agency responsible for about half of the health of about half of all Americans. Mr. Kennedy appears more obsessed in chasing conspiracy theories than chasing solutions to lower health care costs for working families in Georgia and to make sure that we are protected. The last thing we need is a dilettante dabbling in conspiracy theories at HHS. I cannot vote for a nominee who is not going to lower health care costs for Georgians, who is going to undermine basic science in public health, who puts his own interests above the health and the well-being of others. For the health and well-being of all of our families, the people who count on us, to think about them in these rooms of power. I urge all of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to look past politics and think of country and to find the moral courage to do what's right. Oppose this nomination.
Thank you, Senator Warnock. We now have not only a quorum, but all members of the committee are present. I move that the committee favorably report the nomination of the Honorable Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. of California to be Secretary of Health and Human Services. Is there a second? Second. There is a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Grassley.
Aye.
Mr. Grassley, aye. Mr. Cornyn.
Aye.
Mr. Cornyn, aye. Mr. Thune.
Aye.
Mr. Thune, aye. Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Scott, aye. Mr. Cassidy.
Aye.
Mr. Cassidy, aye. Mr. Langford.
Aye.
Mr. Langford, aye. Mr. Daines.
Aye.
Mr. Daines, aye. Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mr. Young, aye. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Barrasso, aye. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson, aye. Mr. Tillis. Mr. Tillis, aye. Mrs. Blackburn. Mrs. Blackburn, aye. Mr. Marshall. Mr. Marshall, aye. Mr. Wyden.
No.
Mr. Wyden, no. Ms. Cantwell.
No.
Ms. Cantwell, no. Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bennett, no. Mr. Warner. Mr. Warner, no. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Whitehouse, no. Ms. Hassan. Ms. Hassan, no. Ms. Cortez Masto. Ms. Cortez Masto, no. Ms. Warren.
No.
Ms. Warren, no. Mr. Sanders.
No.
Mr. Sanders, no. Ms. Smith.
No.
Ms. Smith, no. Mr. Lujan.
No.
Mr. Lujan, no. Mr. Warnock.
No.
Mr. Warnock, no. Mr. Welch.
No.
Mr. Welch, no. Mr. Chairman. Chairman votes aye. Mr. Chairman, the final tally is 14 ayes, 13 nays.
The vote was, would the clerk please restate the vote?
Mr. Chairman, the final tally was 14 ayes, 13 nays.
The vote was 14-13. The nomination is reported favorably. We will now turn to other senators who would like to make a statement. Since I asked my Republican colleagues to hold off at the outset, I'll go to the Republican side next. First, Senator Tillis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I voted aye today, and I want to just briefly explain why. I believe in my 65 years, I'll be 65 in August, that Mr. Kennedy will be one of the first people coming before who is, in fact, not a trained healthcare expert. He views this through the lens of an attorney. He's brought many lawsuits on food safety, vaccine safety, a number of other things. But, Mr. Chair, I think it was Senator Warnock that said that the president said he was going to go wild in the Department of Health and Human Services. I hope he does. I hope he goes wild and actually finds a way to reduce the cost of health care. I hope he goes wild, and instead of having the discussions that we have had for the 10 years that I've been in the Senate of making Medicaid work and making people on Medicaid healthier, I hope he goes wild and figures out how to do it, because the status quo has not achieved much in the way of gain. I hope he goes wild on food safety discussions so that we can actually improve our food safety supply. I hope he goes wild on the health care supply chains and, in fact, tries to make sure that drug prices go down instead of bludgeoning pharmaceutical companies, get everybody in the room and make sure that we do this right. Reduce the cost of bringing a vaccine to market, reduce the cost of bringing drugs and therapeutics to market. Look at the full supply chain, and somebody with a legal mind may do that. He is no health professional. In fact, he's the first, I believe, and since I've been alive, who's not been a healthcare professional in a scientific sense. But he is a professional in terms of carrying this forward and holding people accountable through the courts. And also, Mr. Chair, I'm not going to go much longer, but I had a lot of people call me earlier. I had people from the agriculture industry call me and express concerns, but I'm not aware of any organized, credible group, the Farm Bureau, the Department of Ag Commissioners, or others, who have said that we should vote against Mr. Kennedy. I heard people express their concerns about his pro-choice position. And yet I haven't seen any pro-life organization score this vote or recommend that we should vote against it. I heard him call the NRA a terrorist organization, and yet the NRA is silent on his confirmation. And so I've heard him say that GMOs are a concern. Hopefully we can convince him that not all GMOs are. It's feeding the world. Corn, drought-resistant strains of healthy vegetables will move on. Protein producers were mad about lawsuits were brought against them, but there's been no organized opposition against them. And so maybe it is time to have a different kind of disruptor there. The only way that the only way that Bobby Kennedy and I will get crosswise is if he does actually take a position against the safety of proven vaccines. That will be a problem for me. He answered a very important question to me during the hearing. I asked him specifically if it was his intent to let the scientists of the CDC, the NIH, BARDA, and other organizations to work independently. He said to me under oath that he would. If he fails to do that, that will be a concern for me and something I'll bring up in a future oversight hearing. But, Mr. Chair, we have not made appreciable progress in Medicaid and improving the health of the population on Medicaid. We have a SNAP program that does have too much sugar and things that are eligible in that program that should be eliminated to make these people who are on free and reduced lunch healthier. We need to stop having full trash cans in public school cafeterias full of stuff that the kids aren't eating and figure out how those kids on free and reduced lunch actually have a healthier lifestyle. And so I, for one, think that it is time to put a disruptor in. It is time to put somebody in there that's going to go wild. But there are areas where I think that's exactly what we need. And there are areas of health and human services that if you touch the gold standard for the NIH and the CDC, then I'll have a problem with that nominee, and we'll bring that up during oversight. But it was for those reasons. And the fact is that there's not a single organization that I consider to be credible in this space, in agriculture, in Second Amendment, or in pro-life, who have openly objected and scored this vote. I believe that silence is consent. And the fact that they haven't suggests to me that folks that I'm instructed by are okay with this nomination. And for those reasons, I voted for Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Senator Tillis. Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since we had our hearing last week, Mr. Kennedy has amended his ethics agreement. Recall that his ethics agreement said that while he was Secretary of HHS, he intended to retain a financial interest in ongoing vaccine litigation that he was already collecting money from, and that he wanted to continue to collect that money even though he could affect the outcome of that litigation. Now, he has since changed his position on that. Once this has been exposed and people have talked about it and have some pretty serious reservations about his doing that, He has said that he will instead give his financial interest to his son. That is a fig leaf that is so small, it would take a magnifying glass to see it. No one is fooled about what's happening here. Mr. Kennedy refuses to say that he will not participate in these lawsuits financially the day after he leaves office. And yet, Mr. Kennedy has acknowledged, first, that the American people have a right to know that the decisions you're making are decisions that are in their interest, not in your future financial interest. He has said he thinks that's the right standard, and yet he has figured out how to make money off his anti-vax positions. He's already raked in $2.5 million. He is in a position where he can affect the outcomes by things he does as Secretary of HHS, and yet he refuses to say that he will delay by even a day taking on anti-vax lawsuits the minute he leaves. That is an appalling conflict of interest, and it's one in which the American people can reasonably ask, is Mr. Kennedy's plan to help the American people, or is he planning to use this job to further enrich himself, and he's pointed out with his son, and enrich his family? The importance of this litigation cannot be overstated. This is not only about a private company that gets sued and has to pay out. Vaccine manufacturers often operate on very slim profit margins. If they get sued repeatedly and successfully, they simply move out of the vaccine space. We've already seen this happen with vaccines in the past. 20 years ago, we watched vaccines just move away if they did not have protection from these kinds of lawsuits. The consequence of Mr. Kennedy's ability to make those lawsuits easier is also the ability to shut down access and manufacturing for vaccines for every one of us. And I think that's a terrible mistake.
Thank you. Senator Welch, did you wish to speak?
I did, yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, and thank you, Mr. Ranking Member, for your statement. I want a disruptor in the healthcare system and one leading it. I don't want a destroyer. And there's three issues before any nominee that we have to consider. One is character, another is competence, and a third is priorities. We did not have Carolyn Kennedy here, but she gave a statement. And she said that Bobby was able to attract people through the strength of his personality, his willingness to take risk and break the rules. And those might be desirable qualities if it was accompanied by sober judgment and behavior, because the person who leads a major organization has to have the confidence of the people that work for him. And frankly, some of the things that he did that never explained, a chainsaw taken off the head of a whale, dumping a bear in Central Park for his own amusement. These are just weird things. And we never really got into the character issue of what is required for a person who runs such a major department. The competence question, this is all on a wing and a prayer and a hope. There's no record of Mr. Kennedy having experience in managing a large organization in medicine, no experience with science, and none of the prior experiences required not only to run a major organization, Health and Human Services, but also the CDC, the NIH, and all the other organizations that are under the umbrella of healthcare. And by the way, on the competence issue, let's be candid. This was a deal where Mr. Kennedy was running for president as a Democrat. He lost, and he approached President Trump to make a deal. And for political reasons, the deal was made, and the appointment was going to be that he's Health and Human Services. The president has a right to make that deal. Mr. Kennedy can seek it, but it doesn't translate into competence. And the third is priorities. The priority for Mr. Kennedy is about the vaccines and his theory of that. And we need reliable vaccines and not us conspiracy theorists on that. But you know, the healthcare system is not working for the American people. It is it's too costly. Our employers who care deeply about providing employer-sponsored health care can't afford these premiums. The folks who are getting their insurance on their own can't afford it. Even Obamacare is getting so expensive because the prices are escalating constantly with farm expenses, with the providers having it, with private equity getting into health care. Mr. Kennedy's priority was about his view of vaccines. It was not about making healthcare more affordable and accessible. And in response to really a very direct and easy open-ended question from Senator Cassidy, Mr. Kennedy showed a woeful ignorance, even between the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. So we have a healthcare system that is not serving, as it should, the interest of American citizens, of American businesses, and American taxpayers. And I, after this hearing, did not have confidence that Mr. Kennedy would be the one to lead us to a better future. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Welch. That concludes the remarks that senators have requested to make, and hearing nothing further, I'd like to thank all of our members for attending. This Finance Committee stands adjourned.
Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm Stephanie Quinu. We continue to monitor the developments in the D.C. midair plane collision, and the NTSB just releasing a new image right here of the cockpit voice recorder of the Learjet 55 that crashed on January 31st in Philadelphia. We do want to share that with you. The CVR, the cockpit voice recorder, was located at the initial site of impact at a depth of 8 feet. And we have been hearing from Philadelphia officials as they continue their investigation into what exactly led the medical helicopter to crash at Philadelphia, killing a number of people, everyone on board that helicopter, and one person on the ground. And one person does remain missing at this hour as the investigation continues into this. We did want to share that with you. Any additional updates, of course, we will bring them to you here on Live Now from Fox. I also wanted to share this live look with you. This takes us out to the Potomac River in the Washington, D.C. area as debris removal continues at this hour in the Potomac River. You can see the very heavy equipment right there as we have been sharing some live images with you throughout the morning of plane debris being removed from the Potomac River. That continues at this hour. It is expected to take at least 3 days to remove all of the debris. They have recovered an engine and large pieces of fuselage, and they were working to retrieve a wing from the commercial airliner involved in last week's midair collision near Washington's Reagan National Airport. And they also have recovered more human remains from the Potomac River. That remains the priority, the respectful retrieval of the victims who have still yet to be located. Divers and salvage workers, they are adhering to very strict protocols. They have stopped moving debris at times when human remains were being recovered. The dignified recovery of these remains, that is the #1 priority. That is according to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And we also want to let you know that around 11 a.m. Eastern time, the NTSB is expected to release new data from this mid-air collision. We're keeping a very close eye on that. We do not have a live stream of, any sort of briefing or update. We have been told that data retrieved from the American Airlines regional passenger jet and the U.S. Army helicopter that collided last week will be released by the NTSB. If they do have a presser, you can count on Live Now from Fox to bring that to you. We're going to step away for another 2-minute break. We have a number of live events that we do want to get to after that. Thank you for watching Live Now from Fox on this Tuesday morning. We do have a live event happening on Capitol Hill, and I wanted to share that with you right now. This committee hearing talking about the ongoing fentanyl crisis in America. Let's listen in.
Read your testimony, and the loss of your son was so graphic and so touching. Thank you for sharing. Mr. Puerta, I read yours as well. It's just heartbreaking as you describe those 5 days or 6 days in the hospital before you lost your son. Any of us who've lost a child know exactly what you went through. We'll never forget it. Thank you both for being, thank all the witnesses for being with us today.
Mr. Ranking Member Durbin, I believe you're up first. Well, let's go ahead and hear from the witnesses. Mr. Puerta, would you have an opening statement for the committee, please?
Good morning, Chairman Grassley, Ranking Member Durbin, and esteemed members of this committee. My name is Jaime Puerta, and I'm the president and co-founder of Victims of Illicit Drugs, VOID, and co-chair of Project Facing Fentanyl Now. Joining me today are Mr. Steve Filson, a retired police officer and secretary-treasurer of VOID, as well as Ms. Andrea Thomas, chair of Project Facing Fentanyl, and Ms. Gretchen Peters, CEO of Alliance to Counter Crimes Online, and other family members who have endured the profound loss of a loved one due to illicit fentanyl. VOID, a California-based nonprofit organization, was established to educate, advocate, and raise public awareness about the devastating dangers of illicit fentanyl and other synthetic analogs. Today, I stand before you to give voice to the countless lives lost, including my own son, Daniel Puerta Johnson. My son was not a habitual drug user by any sense of the word, nor had he been diagnosed with substance use disorder, but he was diagnosed with ADHD and depression. On April 1st, 2020, at the very beginning of the pandemic, I walked into my son's room and found him practically lifeless in his bed. In a state of shock and panic, I called 911 first, then his mother. Emergency services arrived at our home and immediately began CPR, and naloxone was administered. He was then transported to Los Angeles Children's Hospital, where a team of specialty doctors did everything they could to bring our son back, but unfortunately were unsuccessful in bringing him out of his catatonic state. His health had become much worse from the day that he had been admitted, and all they could do was to keep him comfortable until his mother, Denise, and I made the agonizing decision to discontinue all life support efforts. On April 6, 2020, at 3:45 p.m., all life support was discontinued. His mother, Denise, got into his hospital bed and laid next to him, gently stroking his beautiful head of dark brown hair, and I was holding his right hand when he drew his last breath at exactly 5:08 p.m. of that April 6th, when he quietly passed away. I kissed the bridge of his nose like I did on most nights when saying goodnight, and left the hospital to go home without my son, utterly broken, devastated, angry, and confused. After my son's passing, I was contacted by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office, and I was told that my son had died due to an overdose. Half a blue pill, which I later came to find out looked exactly like a pharmaceutical-grade blue M30 oxycodone pill, had been found on his dresser. It was sent to the laboratory for analysis and found that the pill which had taken my son's life was illicit fentanyl. My son had consumed what he thought was a blue M30 oxycodone pill, but in fact had unknowingly, I repeat, unknowingly, ingested an illicitly manufactured counterfeit opioid made nothing more than filler, a binding agent, and illicit fentanyl. This was deceptively made to look exactly like a pharmaceutical-grade oxycodone pill, and it killed him. I have shared Daniel's story countless times, yet the problem worsens. Illicit fentanyl remains an insidious threat, so what can we do? Our organization believes that knowledge saves lives, but we also need legislative action. The Halt Fentanyl Act, currently under consideration, is a vital tool in this fight. Illicit fentanyl has no medical use and is highly addictive, warranting its classification as a Schedule I substance under the Controlled Substances Act. For too long, this legislation has stalled despite clear evidence of its necessity. My son Daniel's death is just one of countless tragedies caused by this epidemic. His story is one of hope extinguished, of a family left broken, but it is also a call to action. No family should have to endure the pain that we have suffered. We have the tools to address this crisis. What we need now is the will to act. I urge you, I beg you, to act decisively and combat this crisis. Thank you for inviting me and my fellow bereaved parents to this esteemed committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Puerta. Ms. Noring?
Thank you, Chairman Grassley, Ranking Member Durbin, and members of the committee. My name is Bridget.
So we're listening there to a Senate committee hearing talking about the fentanyl crisis. And right before, we were hearing some very powerful testimony from one of the parents who lost his son unknowingly to fentanyl. We are going to step away for a 2-minute break here on Live Now from Fox. Coming up at 11 a.m., so really in just about 6 minutes or so, we are expecting the NTSB to be providing new information in the D.C. midair plane collision. As soon as we have that live stream, we are going to turn to that in its entirety. In the meantime, continuing our live coverage from Capitol Hill in 2 minutes. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. I'm Stephanie Quinu. In just a number of minutes, we are expecting an update from the NTSB on the D.C. midair plane collision, as you are taking a live look right there of the continued debris removal from the Potomac River. That is set to get underway in just about 3 minutes or so, as the NTSB is expected to share more data retrieved from the American Airlines regional jet and the U.S. Army helicopter that collided last week. That new information is expected to be released. It is slated to begin at around 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We do not have a live look at a podium or this briefing, but as soon as we do, we will let you know. I also wanted to share this live look with you. This is a live look out of Houston, where we are expecting the sheriff right there to announce a $25,000 reward in a triple murder and arson case. The sheriff, alongside FBI Houston and Crime Stoppers, are going to be holding this press conference talking about this specific case and also releasing new surveillance footage of the suspect. And we did want to share that with you as we continue to monitor all of these live events. In the meantime, we are going to head back live to Capitol Hill, where a Senate committee hearing continues at this hour on the fentanyl crisis. We have been hearing some powerful testimony from families who have lost their loved ones. And in fact, you can see a photograph of a young man right there. Let's listen in.
I thank you. I'm honored to be here and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Doring. Dr. Westlake.
Chairman Corman, Ranking Member Durbin, distinguished members of the committee, thank you for inviting me to testify and for your leadership. Before I talk science, I wanted to tell you the last time I used Narcan, it was just days ago. It was a quiet night shift in the emergency department, and I was mulling over my testimony for this very hearing when I had to rush out to a car that screeched into the ambulance bay. It was driven by the girlfriend of a patient who took what he thought was a Percocet. It was actually a lethal dose of fentanyl. He wasn't breathing and was about to go into cardiac arrest. We pulled him out and quickly resuscitated him with Narcan. Within a minute, he went from being blue and pulseless to being wide awake. He went home with his family that night. He was lucky this time. This is my reality and that of so many emergency physicians across America. We have a problem in this country, and it requires all of us to work together to solve it. First, I'd like to clarify what fentanyl-related substances, or FRSs, are and why permanently scheduling them as a class is a critical policy tool. FRSs are highly active opioids, almost identical to fentanyl, except for a tiny difference in their chemical structure created by changing a single ingredient during synthesis. The result of this tweak is a new potent opioid with the same deadly effects as fentanyl, and without class scheduling would be legal until it caused numerous deaths. Fentanyls are so toxic and lethal that they can be classified and have actually been used as chemical weapons. The lethal dose is merely 2 milligrams, equivalent to 5 grains of sand, meaning that 1 teaspoon can kill 2,000 people. That is what is in this packet of sugar. It could kill 2,000 people if this were fentanyl. Telling parents, tragically on more than one occasion, even friends of mine, that their child will never come home is the worst part of my job. In fact, the inspiration for FRS class scheduling arose out of the tragedy of my friend Lori Badura's son, Archie. Archie was an altar server with my daughters. He started with prescription opioids, then moved to heroin and unknowingly fentanyl. I resuscitated Archie on his second to last overdose. At that time, I pulled out a body bag, laid it down next to him, and warned him that that's where he'd end up if he didn't seek help. He stayed clean for 6 months until illicit fentanyl ended his life. One of the last things my friend Lori saw of her son Archie was him being zipped up into a body bag. Motivated to act by hundreds of such deaths, FRS scheduling legislation came together quickly and was enacted unanimously in Wisconsin legislature in 2017. DEA adopted it as national policy shortly thereafter, but only Congress can make it permanent. Some who oppose point to deaths from illicit fentanyl as proof that it doesn't work, but this is a misunderstanding of the facts. FRS scheduling does not address illicit fentanyl. It was never designed to do so. It only removes the incentive for legal chemical companies to create new FRSs, thus stopping them from ever existing in the first place. There is no quick and easy solution to the scourge of illicit fentanyl, but the solution to FRSs is a simple legislative fix, one that you have before you right now. At its core, FRS scheduling is not an extension of the war on drugs or a law enforcement strategy designed to incarcerate. There have been a total of 8 federal prosecutions under the language as of 2021, half of which had already been known to have ties to drug cartels. As well, there has never been a prosecution for a non-bioactive FRS because there are none. All fentanyl-related substances encountered to date have been found to have potent opioid activity. One of them is 7,000 times more potent than morphine. However, if Schedule I penalties were removed for FRS trafficking, then it would re-incentivize their creation and significantly weaken the law's most powerful proactive and preventative effects. There is a time and place for criminal justice reform, but FRS scheduling is not it. Some suggest FRS scheduling would have a negative impact on research. While theoretical, it has been addressed with stakeholder input and is supported by the very agencies and organizations representing academic scientific research, including the NIH, HHS, FDA, and the National Institute of Drug Abuse. The HALT Fentanyl Act would significantly loosen restrictions into studying all Schedule I substances, not just FRSs, and open up promising areas of substance abuse research. In conclusion, for the past 6 years, FRS scheduling has been federal policy. As the primary architect of the Wisconsin law, I could not be more pleased. In a few short years, the creation and distribution of new FRSs has ground to a halt. In our battle against fentanyl, the elimination of related substances that had previously escaped our scheduling and devastated communities across the nation is surely one bright spot. But Congress must take action and permanently close the spigot of FRSs. The fact is, you can't die from ingesting something never created, nor can you be incarcerated for trafficking something that does not exist. That's the beauty and simplicity of FRS scheduling. Thanks again for this time, and I look forward to answering your questions.
So we're listening in there to the Senate committee hearing talking about the ongoing fentanyl crisis in the United States. I also wanted to let you know that as we continue to showcase all the live events happening right now, we have a dedicated stream on our YouTube page if you're interested in listening in to this committee hearing on the fentanyl crisis. I also wanted to let you know that the NTSB update into last week's plane collision in the Washington, D.C. area, that has now been postponed to 1 p.m. Eastern time. It was scheduled for 11 a.m. Eastern time. So we did want you to be aware of that. We're going to step away for a 2-minute break here on Live Now from Fox. After that, we have a news stream coming into our studios. This is of the Senate floor. This is a special executive session as senators right now are debating the nomination of Pam Bondi to be the next U.S. Attorney General. And I did want to share some of that with you after this 2-minute break. Welcome back to Live Now from Fox. Happening right now on the Senate floor, a special session underway right now as senators are talking about, debating, discussing the nomination of Pam Bondi to be the next U.S. Attorney General. I do want to head over there live and listen in. You're taking a live look at the Senate floor, and during the break, we were hearing from some senators, but as you can see, they are between speakers as this is a special session happening right now. The U.S. Senate convening and proceeding to an executive session to resume consideration of the nomination of Pam Bondi to be the next U.S. Attorney General. Originally, President Trump had selected Matt Gaetz from Florida, former Representative Matt Gaetz, who then stepped away after some controversy. President Trump then selecting Pam Bondi, who previously was Florida's Attorney General and now on her way potentially to be the Attorney General for the United States. We do see some action there on the Senate floor as we see some paperwork being delivered right here as there are senators that are scheduled to speak. No one yet at the podium, so I did want to share that with you. We're going to continue to monitor this. I'm just going to raise the audio to see if someone is going to be stepping in. We do have a number of other live events that we can transition to as we await, but I did want to let you know that this is happening right now, and we're going to continue to monitor all of the developments. Still no speakers there on the floor as senators have gathered for the special session to consider the nomination of Pam Bondi as the next U.S. Attorney General. We're going to just continue to keep a very close eye on this stream, and if there should be any developments, we are going to let you know. In the meantime, as I mentioned before, there is a live event happening out of Houston as the FBI as well as the sheriff talking about a triple murder and arson case, providing new surveillance footage and a $25,000 reward. We see someone at the podium right now. I'm going to raise the audio.
We will be hearing remarks from Sheriff Ed Gonzalez in both English and Spanish, from Investigator Wendy Posadas from the Harris County Sheriff's Office, and from Special Agent Douglas Williams with the FBI Houston, and of course the mother of Cameron Richard, Miss Tina Taylor. I'd also like to recognize some of our valuable partners who have joined us here today. Mr. Andy Kahn, who's the Director of Victim Services here at Houston Crime Stoppers, our partners here at the Harris County Fire Marshal's Office. We even have Fire Marshal Christensen here herself. Thank you for your partnership, since this was an arson case as well as the family members of the foster side as well, who suffered significant loss. I do want to say as well and preface that the families do not want to be approached by media after the fact, so we will have individual interviews, but they're going to be with the sheriff as well as our investigative team. I will be sending out, or we rather will be sending out video of the surveillance, as well as individual interviews with Mr. Michael Foster, Colin's father, as well as Tina Taylor. Without further ado, I'd like to kick it off to Sheriff Ed Gonzalez.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us as we share some very important information with our community. We stand before you with heavy hearts, seeking justice for Kelly Masrali, her son Colin Foster, and his girlfriend Cameron Richard. 3 lives brutally stolen on August 18th, 2024. This was not just a fire, it was a calculated act of murder and arson. This cowardly crime has created an unfillable void in the lives of those who love Kelly, Colin, and Cameron. We will not rest until those responsible are brought to justice. Our dedicated detectives have been working tirelessly, pursuing every lead. Today, we are releasing surveillance footage of a suspect, a tall, muscular individual entering a black 4-door sedan. We believe someone in our community recognizes this person or the vehicle. We know this suspect, this coward, also had help as someone was driving his getaway car. We implore you to come forward with any information, no matter how small it may seem. We are committed to using every resource available to solve this case. We owe it to the survivors and their families to ensure justice is served. We are grateful for our partnership with the FBI Houston. Special Agent in Charge Williams is here, which has enabled us to offer a reward of up to $25,000 for information leading to the arrest of the individuals responsible for this crime. This reward reflects our collective commitment to seeking justice for Kelly, Colin, and Cameron, and their grieving loved ones, the survivors. You can submit tips anonymously through the hotline at 1-800-CALL-FBI. That's 1-800-CALL-FBI, which is 225-5324, or online at tips.fbi.gov. I would like to thank the FBI Houston and Crime Stoppers. Andy Kahn is here today with us as well for their unwavering support. I also want to express my deepest gratitude to the families for their strength and trust during this unimaginable, difficult time. Lastly, I commend our detectives for their relentless determination in uncovering the truth. To the perpetrators, you cannot hide. We will find you. The families deserve closure, and our community deserves to be safe. Do the right thing and turn yourself in or call in with that tip that we need. Together, we will bring these criminals to justice and honor the memory of those we have lost. Briefly in Spanish. Buenos días, gracias por acompañarnos. Estamos buscando justicia para las familias de Kelly Masrali, su hijo Colin Foster y su novia Cameron Richard. 3 vidas brutalmente arrebatadas el 18 de agosto del 2024. Sus trágicas muertes en un incendio en su casa en Cypress han dejado a su familia destrozada y a la comunidad de luto. Esto no fue simplemente un incendio, fue un acto calculado de asesinato. Este crimen cobarde ha creado un vacío irreemplazable en las vidas de los seres queridos que siguen aquí con nosotros. No descansaremos hasta que los responsables sean llevados antes la justicia. Nuestros detectives han estado trabajando incansablemente, siguiendo cada pista. Hoy estamos publicando imágenes de vigilancia de un sospechoso, un individuo alto y musculoso que se ve entrando en un sedán negro de 4 puertas. Creemos que alguien en nuestra comunidad reconoce a esta persona o el vehículo. Sabemos que este sospechoso también tuvo ayuda, ya que alguien conducía su auto. Les imploramos que se presenten con cualquier información, por pequeña que sea. Estamos comprometidos a utilizar todos los recursos disponibles para resolver este caso. Le debemos a las víctimas y a sus familias garantizar que se haga justicia. Agradecemos nuestra colaboración con el FBI de Houston, que nos ha permitido ofrecer una recompensa de hasta $25,000 por información que conduzca al arresto de los individuos responsables de este crimen.
We are hearing right there from the Houston Sheriff, Ed Gonzalez, as he is now translating everything that he said into Spanish. They are announcing a $25,000 reward in the Cypress triple murder and arson case, leading to the identification and arrest of the person or people responsible for the triple murder and arson case that happened back in August of 2024 in Cypress, Texas, that resulted in the deaths of of a woman, her son, and his girlfriend. They did also mention that new surveillance footage of the suspect will be released to the media, showing the suspect getting into a black four-door sedan driven by someone else. We did want to share that with you as we continue to listen in, and it does appear as though Sheriff Gonzalez might be wrapping up just a little bit. We're going to raise the audio.
Good morning. My name is Wendy Posadas. I am the lead investigator in the triple homicide arson case that we'll be speaking about today. On Sunday, August 18, 2024, homicide investigators were called out to the residence that was located at 14602 Plains River Drive in Cypress, Texas. Upon our arrival, we were informed 3 victims were located on the second floor of the residence inside of their bedrooms with defects that were consistent with gunshot wounds. During the investigation, the medical examiner's office conducted autopsies on the victims and was able to determine that all 3 victims were shot multiple times and were deceased prior to the fire starting. My team and I, we canvassed for surveillance video in the neighborhood, and we were able to retrieve video that captured the suspect vehicle as well as the suspect. The suspect vehicle was first seen at approximately 5:30 in the morning in the neighborhood, driving around for approximately 30 minutes. The vehicle stopped at the intersection of Watermill Drive and Palos Park Drive, where a suspect exited the vehicle. At this time, we learned that there was more than one suspect involved in this case. One suspect walked southbound on Palos Park Drive as the other suspect drove the suspect vehicle around the neighborhood. The suspect walked south on Palos Park Drive towards the community center, jumped the fence at the community park, and walked down the fence line towards the back of the residence. At approximately 6:05, the suspect entered the residence through the back gate and entered through the back door of the residence. There was no forced entry observed at the back door of the residence. The suspect walked up to the second floor, shot and killed all 3 victims, and intentionally set the house on fire to cover up the crime and the evidence. The suspect walked out of the residence at approximately 6:11 in the morning, walked through the community park, walked to the intersection of Cypresswood Drive and Palos Park Drive where the suspect vehicle awaited. At approximately 6:14, the suspect enters the suspect vehicle and starts driving. The suspect vehicle starts driving eastbound on Cypresswood Drive. At approximately 6:15 in the morning, the vehicle was last seen traveling southbound on Cypress Rose Hill Road towards 290. The suspect vehicle was observed to be a dark-colored 4-door sedan with chrome rims, chrome grille, and chrome emblem in the front. There was reflectors in the back bumper, and the third brake light was positioned on the lower portion of the rear window. The suspect observed on camera was a medium-built male wearing a dark-colored hoodie and long pants. We're seeking justice for the families of Kelly, Cameron, and Colin. There's somebody out there that knows something. We are reaching out to those people to come forward and call the FBI tip line or Crime Stoppers. I've been closely working with the FBI and Special Agent Brian Ritchie, whose expertise and resources have been very helpful in this investigation. The FBI has been able to procure a reward money for any tips that leads us to an arrest in this case. I will now pass the podium over to FBI Special Agent Douglas Williams, who is speaking on behalf of the FBI. Thank you.
So good morning. My name is Doug Williams, and I'm the special agent in charge of the FBI here in Houston. I'd first like to start by offering the FBI's condolences to the family of Kelly, Cameron, and Colin, whose life was tragically taken on August 18, 2024. So I am so sorry for your tragic loss. And I am proud and want to thank the partners that are here with me today, from the Harris County Sheriff's Office to the Harris County Fire Marshals, our partners at Crime Stoppers, and the entire team at the Harris County Sheriff's Office who is supporting this investigation. We're all working this case together, but we need the public's help to solve this triple homicide. Today, and the reason I'm here, is the FBI is offering up to $25,000 for information leading to the identification and arrest of the suspects who heinously killed Kelly Mascarelli, Colin Foster, and Cameron Richard. If you know anything that might help investigators, please call 1-800-CALL-FBI. FBI Houston is committed to helping the Harris County Sheriff's Office bring justice in this case. Kelly, Colin, and Cameron's families and friends deserve all the assistance and support we can provide. FBI Houston frequently assists local law enforcement with a variety of cases. We offer state-of-the-art technology from our world-renowned FBI lab in Quantico. We sometimes embed intelligence analysts at local departments to delve into unsolved cases. And we have dozens of federally deputized local detectives and investigators who work alongside FBI Houston's special agents to protect our communities every day. Despite all of these resources, we depend on the public's help to solve many of these cases we work. This triple homicide is no exception. The egregious and violent nature of Kelly, Colin, and Cameron's murders have led us to offer up to a $25,000 reward for information leading to the identification and arrest of those responsible. Someone knows something about what happened on the night of August 18, 2024. Someone has information that can help our investigators solve this case. We need that person to come forward. If you have any information, call 1-800-CALL-FBI. Or if you want to submit a tip online, you can go to tips.fbi.gov. No tip is too small. And once again, the number is 1-800-CALL-FBI. Thank you for your help. We need it.
Good morning. Tina Taylor, Cameron's mom. It's been almost 6 months. It's been 6 long months. And I think all of our families are suffering. Three lives were taken for no reason. My 4'6", 82-pound daughter was shot to death for no reason. Her boyfriend was shot to death and his mother was shot to death. And there is somebody evil out there walking around, and they will do it to somebody else, and they will harm somebody else's family. They will destroy somebody else's family. And if you know anything, if you have heard anything, somebody even mentioned something to you, whether you know it to be true or not, please call. Call the tip line, call the FBI, call Harris County detectives. Nobody should be allowed to take a child from a mother or to take a son from a father and a mother, or to take somebody's mother. It's horrible. And evil cannot go long. God is too good, and it will come to pass, and this person will be caught eventually. But we need everybody to call in, and if they know anything, to say something, because somebody else is going to die if this person is not taken off the street. So thank you.
Listen, in closing, I think you heard from Tina just how heinous this was and the impact still being felt by these families. And this is truly unacceptable. It was a heinous crime. These individuals need to be taken off the streets. This was premeditated. when you look at having a getaway driver, canvassing the location, trying to, burn the place down, after the brutal killings, this is unacceptable. And it's very rare to see a triple murder in a community. It's not something we see every day. And we're not going to rest and leave this unsolved. I have a full confidence in Detective Posadas and this entire homicide team that we have. We're very fortunate to have such wonderful professionals. They typically, if I'm not mistaken, have the highest clearance rate in the nation. But this is one that's unsolved, and this is one where we need our community's help. Let me remind everybody that morning on August 18th of 2024, yes, this happened early in the morning, but it wasn't so early in the morning that people were not out yet. People typically go walking around, they go get coffee, they're walking their dogs. Somebody out there knows information. To that getaway driver or others that may have been involved in a cursory way, look, come forward. You could either be potentially a witness to this or you're going to be a defendant facing a capital murder charge. But we need to get this case resolved, and we need our public's help. Our community always comes forward, does the right thing, and we're asking, we're pleading for that help. Again, want to thank our partners for their investigative support at the FBI under Special Agent in Charge Williams and his team. They do phenomenal work. We work very well together. We're leaving no stone unturned, using every strategy, every technological tool that may be available, and to the fire marshal as well. Laura Christensen, thank you as well for you and your team and the partnership. We're all working together. We need to get this case solved. These folks have already killed 3 beautiful individuals. And as you heard from Tina, there's no telling if this person will go and just commit it again. There's nothing to lose at this point. So we need them off the streets ASAP. Thank you. Any questions that we could answer?
Have you determined the motive? I mean, were these suspects having any beef with any of the victims inside the house? I mean, have you figured out why they were being targeted?
Typically with this, look, our main thing is to identify who's responsible. I think that the motive will follow after that, but I'll let Detective Posadas, the lead investigator, answer any specifics if she has.
At this time, we're not able to confirm any motive. The investigation is still ongoing.
Were the victims having any beef with anybody prior to this?
Like I said, it's still under investigation, so right now we can't confirm.
Was there any evidence recovered inside the home that might, be connected to the suspect or anything that might lead to a motive?
We had some shell casings that were left inside of the residence, but besides that, it was there was a fire, so there was a lot of stuff that was, not there for us to.
What about information on the victim's phones? Anything that might, tip you off to who this might be, or?
We're still looking into that. It's like I said, it's still an ongoing investigation, so there's not a lot of information that I will be putting out there at the time.
Was the suspect, were they expecting anybody to come over that morning? I know you said there wasn't any forced entry. Did they know that somebody might be coming over?
At this time, we don't have any information that leads us to say that there was somebody coming over at that time in the morning.
Was a gun found inside the home or any weapons that were left behind?
There was a weapon found inside, but we don't believe it was the suspects.
Who do you believe it was?
At this time, we believe it was Collins' weapon.
So we're listening in there to Houston, Texas officials and FBI offering a $25,000 reward in the yet-to-be-solved triple murder and arson case in Cypress. We are going to step away for a 2-minute break. I wanted to share this live look before we did that, as we are anticipating Baltimore Governor Wes Moore to announce a new design concept for the Baltimore Key Bridge that previously collapsed. This is a live look into this briefing that is set to get underway. We're going to step away for a 2-minute break, continuing to monitor this as we are expecting it to get underway momentarily. We'll be Thank you for watching Live Now from Fox. I'm Stephanie Quinu. Time right now is 11:33 Eastern, 8:33 Pacific. I wanted to share a live look with you from Baltimore, Maryland, as we are expecting Maryland Governor Wes Moore to talk about the new Key Bridge. And we were seeing that there was a podium in place, folks seated. We did see the mayor of Baltimore also seated in the front row there. So we are anticipating hearing more details about the upcoming design of the new Key Bridge. And we can see that the camera now panning. You can see that the podium is right there. I'm just going to hang on this just for a little bit. It's unclear. We weren't provided with the exact time as to when this briefing is going to start. So I am just going to raise the audio, pause for a moment. If this doesn't get underway in the next moment or so, we do have a number of live events that I do want to get to as we continue to monitor this. But in the meantime, let's listen in. You can hear the natural sound from the camera right there. No one yet at the podium as the photographer continues to pan around. In the front row, though, we do see the mayor of Baltimore standing by as we are expecting Maryland Governor Wes Moore to talk about the new concept, the new design of the Francis Scott Key Bridge that had previously collapsed back in March of last year after a container ship lost power and crashed into one of the bridge's supporting columns. 6 people from a roadwork crew were on the bridge at the time, and unfortunately, all 6 of those members lost their lives. Demolition took many weeks to get underway, but that has now finished, and the rebuilding process will begin. It is expected to take nearly 4 years and cost about $2 billion. Back in August, the Maryland Transportation Authority did award the construction contract to an Omaha-based corporation. And so we are expecting to learn more about the design concept happening there. We're going to continue to monitor this. As soon as Governor Moore steps up to the podium, we will take that live. In the meantime, we do have a number of other live events that I do want to get to. Coming up in just about 20 minutes or so, as you take a live look from New Orleans. That is the Superdome. That is the place where the Super Bowl is going to take place on Sunday between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. We are expecting to hear from the Chiefs at noontime as they hold the Super Bowl press conference right there. We're going to also bring that to you when it happens. We have a lot of news to get to. What we're going to do is we are going to step away for another 2-minute break. After that, continuing to monitor the briefing that is set to get underway in Maryland. And if that has not yet happened, we're going to head back live to Capitol Hill, where happening right now, a Senate committee hearing is happening talking about the ongoing fentanyl crisis in the United States. We've been hearing from lawmakers. We've been hearing from law enforcement. And we've also been hearing from family members who have lost loved ones to fentanyl. A lot that and much more coming up after the break. We're going to head back live to Baltimore, Maryland, as Governor Wes Moore just stepped up to the podium to talk about the new construction of the Key Bridge. Let's listen in.
That the dolly had slammed into the Key Bridge and brought it down. In response to this horrible tragedy, that first morning we laid out 4 key objectives. The first, we would locate all of the victims and provide comfort and closure to their families. The second, we would clear the channel and fully reopen the Port of Baltimore to vessel traffic. The third, we would support everyone who was affected by this collapse, from the dock workers to our small businesses. And the fourth, we would rebuild the Francis Scott Key Bridge. We tackled the first 3 directives faster than anyone anticipated. For Directive 1, we recovered all 6 victims and brought comfort and closure to their families. And I want the entire state to know that we still continue to stand with those families and be with those families. And I want all of the families to know that the entire state continues to stand with you. Están en nuestros corazones, nuestros pensamientos y nuestras oraciones. Directive 2. While many said it would take 11 months to reopen the Port of Baltimore, this team got it done in 11 weeks. We had an extraordinary unified command that worked day and night to get that channel cleared, and to see so many members of that unified command, from the Coast Guard to the U.S. Navy, Coast Guard, U.S. Navy SUPSOL, from the Army Corps of Engineers to our local leadership, Mr. Mayor, and our local county and our county executives, to all of our federal partners, to our MDTA, our MDOT, our MSP, everybody who was involved in this work. This was the gold standard of what unified command could and should look like. Directive 3, we passed bipartisan legislation with the Maryland General Assembly to support our workers and keep Marylanders on the job. And I want to give a shout out to the members of the Maryland General Assembly who got it done within days on a bipartisan basis to be able to make sure that funding was there. Thank you, Senator. And after completing those 3 directives, we set our focus on number 4, rebuilding the Francis Scott Key Bridge. And this directive is not about nostalgia. This directive is about necessity. Because you cannot have a fully functioning Port of Baltimore, the gateway to America, without the Key Bridge. And we wanted to make sure that people understood that this was one of the core arteries that was necessary to make sure that the Port of Baltimore could continue to do all the work that it could do on behalf of not just the people of Maryland, but the people of this country. And when it came to making sure that we would rebuild the Francis Scott Key Bridge, we made sure to tackle this directive just like we tackled the other 3 directives. Together, arm in arm, that we were going to be mission first and people always. And over the last several months, we have spoken with, and I know I've spoken personally with, over 160 members of Congress on this issue, explaining to them the importance, walking them through the details. They were able to work in partnership with our Attorney General